SeatGeek is the official sponsor of the Snake Sports Talk Show, with hundreds of events listed, live concerts, sporting events, and so much more. Go on to SeatGeek.com, enter promo code Snake Sports Talk Show, and save yourself $20 off your first purchase.
And now, broadcasting live from Las Vegas, the Snake Sports Talk Show with Jake Silva starts now.
Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. We are live on a Tuesday and fresh and back from little mini vacation over the weekend. This is the Snake Sports Talk Show, wherever and however you may be watching and listening. We're live on all platforms known to man. iHeartRadio, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, Instagram, and TikTok. That's where you could like, follow, and subscribe to the show. Check us out as well on Sports Wave Network, as this is the home of the Snake Sports Talk Show. Taylor joining us here today. Woo! Taylor, what a beautiful yet beautiful weekend it certainly was. For myself being up in Utah, but let me just tell you, every time when there's an embarrassment, teams usually come back from embarrassments. We came back strong from our 6-8, 7-7 picks, and I loved what I saw over the weekend.
Yeah, it panned out in our direction. Thankfully, we were down and out last week, but we bounced back big, and I'm ready for another week of NFL football.
Oh, so am I. Beautiful times too, and the fact of, you come back, your mind's clear, and again, there's a lot of things going on, obviously next month being the biggest month of them all. So I can't end up waiting for that personally, but still, it was great to see some great games. It was great to see kind of, we see the flow of offenses and we see exactly how all these teams, kind of prepared. And then again, everybody's all pulling for, this Taylor Swift, Travis Kelce thing. And she sure as hell gave really good thumbs up, for Kansas City's, their performance against the Bears.
Yeah, I didn't know that it was such a breaking news or anything, but man, they really panned to her a couple times during that game, and she was going absolutely crazy. So that's cool to see.
Oh, it's a beautiful sight. Well, let me just tell you what, isn't really beautiful that, of course, a lot of us really kind of talk about. Because, again, over the weekend, we saw an awful lot of really good offenses panning out, and they were fantastic. And then, all of a sudden, too, defensive play, really, really good. But the one that was very atrocious, there were actually two games that played this way, and I'll get to both of them. But first, I want to start off with, so Kansas City, they absolutely annihilated the Chicago Bears. And for many reasons, Travis Kelce showing off to potentially Taylor Swift, as a little date night and whatnot, hanging out with mom. Oh, it's a beautiful feeling. But as far as for quarterback Justin Fields, the Chicago Bears have completely failed Justin Fields. I have watched him now in the last couple starts that he's had in the last couple of years. And the Chicago Bears just are always in their own way. Egotistical. They are also stuck on the 85 championship, which this has been far from their championship for years. It's 2023. Get rid of that television. Get rid of those old, tapes. It's over. Chicago doesn't know how to adapt to today's technology. I'll give you an example. I've told you before last week, when I started talking about head coaches, I usually break them up as Androids or iPhones. iPhones is probably the newest, and latest and greatest inventions known to man that Steve Jobs has created. And then not only that, they're innovative. The security technology is probably one of the best and fastest right now. Um, and they give you reliability. That sounds a lot like offensive coaches. Defensive coaches, they feel a lot like androids. They go through so many of them, yet reliable when it comes to the defense. And they are very, very conservative people, overly conservative. You watch the offense. The offense doesn't really put up like 30 or 40 or let alone 70 points after we just saw that from Miami. Defensive coaches usually won't do that. And Chicago, once again, defensive minded, adds another defensive coach. They moved on from Matt Nagy. But here's the only thing about Chicago. Okay, they whiffed on so many quarterbacks. And this is honestly quarterback purgatory. Justin Fields, great kid out of Ohio State. We thought he was going to be something next to Trevor Lawrence. A lot of people bought into Zach Wilson. I didn't. I thought this was too much of a hype. You got a kid up in BYU, not really facing off against premier college programs. And sometimes we can almost say the same about Ohio State, but at least Ohio State really does try in some of those areas because the Big Ten, they're filled with them. Michigan with Jim Harbaugh, and now you got Notre Dame and you got several other teams that are going to be coming into to the Big Ten. So ultimately, the Chicago Bears, the only reliable franchise quarterback that they've ever won a franchise with was a guy named Jim McMahon. That was it. They've gone through so many of them. Cade McNown and Jim Harbaugh and, Mitch Trubisky. Hell, Rex Grossman. You really thought that he was going to stick around after he ended up making the Super Bowl appearance in 2006? I didn't think so. And on top of all that, you missed out on a lot of big-time draft pick quarterbacks all throughout that tenure. Should I have to remind yourselves about 2017 when they whiffed on Patrick Mahomes and Deshaun Watson that year? Yeah. I mean, take a risk, take a swing, but at the same time, you need to know your technology. You need to kind of know your brand. And unfortunately, this brand has honestly been so overdue, long overdue since 85. They can't get out of their way. Defense always seems to play great. Well, they didn't play great this past week from the looks of it. You talk about great defensive guys. Can we stop with this? The league is shifting to offensive coaches, and Justin Fields is pissed. And ultimately, if Justin Fields would have gotten a mulligan, okay, there are two teams in play. Chicago, quarterback purgatory. They whiff on their quarterbacks. New York Jets, I don't know if they're borderline quarterback purgatory, but they certainly don't keep a lot of their quarterbacks healthy. That's why down the list, they've had so many of them. And the thing about it is, if the Jets could take a mulligan in that 21 draft class after Trevor Lawrence, I felt like the Jets probably could have used Justin Fields. Because here's the thing that would have benefited for Justin Fields. Reliable coach, reliable general manager in Joe Douglas. Now, even though the ownership's a little bit, is a little bit wonky, but you got something. You've got a great defense. You've got Garrett Wilson, arguably one of the best wide receivers so far and still growing in his career. And then you've got a dual threat running backs. At least you have some sort of reliability. But Chicago, it's quarterback purgatory. They've whiffed on all their quarterbacks, and they don't build up and help them, which is why Justin Fields feels so frustrated. I don't blame him. If the Jets could take a mulligan, they probably should have drafted Justin Fields. Both are small quarterbacks, but I feel like there would have been a little bit more of an edge and a little bit more of trust in the building, and you wouldn't be in this position. However, there's a possibility that if the Jets really had to, because of course, Aaron Rodgers, he's out with a torn ACL. He's out for the entirety of the year, and he's 40 years old. They don't usually come back right when they're older. It's hard, but at the same time, they could pursue somebody like Justin Fields if they truthfully wanted to, but it depends on the price and it also depends on where you stand. But the McCaskies for years have been so tone deaf. They're getting way too old. It's just not the same anymore. And that's where they really have to get out of their own way. I feel for Justin Fields. This is arguably so terrible, and it's ridiculous to an extent. You promise big things and you leave nothing but broken promises. And Justin Fields, all he wants is he just wants somebody that can support him and hear him and help him and wrap your arms around him. That's all it is. And Justin Fields doesn't seem to be getting that in Chicago. In fact, it's cold, it's hardcore fan base. That is a lot to carry, but they force it upon you. That's what Chicago does. And yeah, another quarterback that at least had the lengthier contract was Jay Cutler. But look at Jay Cutler. He moved from Denver to Chicago. So the Bears and the McCaskies really have to just look at themselves in the mirror, understand exactly where the problem and the issues are, and they need to fix it. Even if you need to sell the franchise, that's what a lot of us have been talking and dying for is Chicago, for that franchise to just be open for business and then at least give a positive direction because you're moving them out of Soldier Field. You're moving them out of a lot of different places. What the hell are you doing? You're killing a lot of what the fan base is meant to be, but you're also killing very, very deeply of what this generation of football is. It's offensive centric. It's not big on defense anymore. Matt Eberflus, really? I don't know. I don't know what to think of the Chicago Bears. They got an ass whooping against Kansas City on the road, which you kind of knew exactly what was going to happen. That was a pick I whiffed. It's the last time I'm going to pick the Chicago Bears in that. I don't know what I was thinking, but I just felt like Chicago would have at the very least had a chance, and Justin Fields probably would have carried it. But it's too much to have in the tank. All right, I just want to set the time, to really kind of commence this ceremony from here. So today I'm basically honoring of Bronco Country. This past week, they died. Okay, they died. And it's unfortunate and it's sad. But I am honoring Bronco Country because of the fact of this is humiliating and this was absolutely just atrocity that was written all over this board. And the thing about it is, look at both look at both sides of this. Miami is unstoppable, and they've also got an amazing offense. And Mike McDaniel, by the way, he was a former ball boy with Denver. Denver never really listened to him. He was just basically a ball boy. He was just, doing his job. Eventually becomes a head coach of the Dolphins. Faces off against, the Denver Broncos, who he formerly worked with, and then ended up opening that much of ass whooping all throughout Denver. But here's the thing about the Denver Broncos, which is sad, and I feel for a lot of them. They're trapped. They're trapped. Russell Wilson is clearly not the quarterback that he used to be. He is 35, playing like he's 45. At the same time, it was way too fast for him. Defensively, everybody was coming at him left and right. And Denver, by the way, I love Patrick Surtain and Justin Simmons and a lot of, a couple of their defensive pieces. But they got mauled on a ton. It was bad all across it. This is what's going to be hard about the Denver Broncos because honestly, brand new ownership, these guys, owners of Walmart, I'm telling you right now, tickets are probably going to be on rollback price. Okay. Anybody who even remembers that term of Walmart years ago, I certainly do. I'm sure Taylor does as well. But these tickets are probably going to be on rollback price. But Denver, you've got to fix this thing. Quarterback, last amazing quarterback they had was Peyton Manning. They paid the price. Since then, They've went through several quarterbacks, and one who's a former Bronco quarterback just got signed by the Jets. We'll talk a little bit more up on it, um, but this whole experiment that you're trying to basically sell me on is just not working. And by the way, they've got their head coach in Sean Payton. Payton is trying to recreate a culture that's been nothing but negativity. And a lot of these players were just kind of accustomed to doing whatever that they want. And I know Javon Holland ended up, he messaged and basically said it was disrespectful, honestly, to keep Russell Wilson in the game, especially with how far the score was. But I think what Sean Payton was trying to use an example of is that he is trying to get Russell Wilson to get out of his comfort zone, stop being cringy, and play football. Be better, do better. Because ultimately, there's a high price tag that you have on your shoulders. You need to play like it. What are you selling out for? Commercials or, Sierra, maybe there's jewelry, whatever. But in the end, it's not translating to W's. And this is what's really ticking off a lot of Denver fans because you spend this much money, it's brand new ownership, you got a GM that they literally kind of carried over, and then they bring in Sean Payton because they realized Nathaniel Hackett was just way over his skis. I mean, this is just bad all the way around. But this is why I think Denver's going to be trapped. They're going to be trapped for the next couple of years because ultimately, when you made the initial trade for Russell Wilson, I wouldn't have given him a contract. I may have only given him like an arbitrary one because at least I have 1 year to see how this experiment works. That's what smart franchises do. Look at Kansas City. Look at Philadelphia. Look at a lot of these, San Francisco. You really think they're going to give long, lengthy terms for something that we don't even know if that experiment's going to work? I think that was just a bad mistake by general managing. And then the ownership, because they've got loads and loads of money, is still behind it. But Denver's really just trapped in this whole thing. And I feel saddened. I'm respecting Bronco Country because that you don't wish that upon anybody at all on that. But you definitely feel what humongous disappointment looks and feels like. Just remind yourself of that game. It was just absolutely horrendous and atrocious. But they got to do something about this. They have a couple good players. If you got to start blowing this thing up and trading a lot of pieces away, which is one thing I don't think they want to see themselves do, but sometimes with teams you got to. And it's hard enough that they literally are dealing with this kind of punishment. But they just got to figure themselves out. Good stuff. Taylor, I mean, in my life watching football, I have never, ever, ever, like I watch games like Kansas City that have been scores like that, but I have never seen a score like this. And you're on the road in Miami. It is absolute. I mean, good God. I feel for Denver fans, but this is atrocity to its utmost. I'm not putting any of this on Sean Payton because it's his first year. But again, a lot of people, when they look at ownership, they look at, take for instance, the Mets. When Steve Cohen bought the Mets, and Steve Cohen's a smart guy, big time billionaire. He wants to let this franchise win. So that's why you go get Francisco Lindor. That's why you get Max Scherzer. That's why you get these players. But they're not seeing it translate to championships and to real big crucial W's. This is the same kind of feeling we're kind of getting with Denver. And again, Colorado, the University of Colorado got their ass whooped by Oregon over the weekend, but still, at least they know they swallowed the hard pill, moved on next week. But that's a promising program that I'm going to see build in the next 5 years as long as Deion Sanders is there. But this is just a trap for Denver right now.
Yeah, it's really tough, and I feel like there's a couple franchises, and you just got done talking about Fields, but I feel like there's a few franchises that think that slapping a quarterback into a situation will fix it, right? Like like the Bears, they went out and got Fields. They're like, we're gonna be saved now. but it really takes a full team effort, right? So now the Broncos have Sean Payton and they have Russell Wilson. I don't know if you've noticed, but Russell Wilson has never played the same since he threw that game-ending pick in the Super Bowl that we all got to see, right? I think that kind of changed something in his brain. He doesn't pull the trigger like he used to. He doesn't read the defense as fast as he used to. He's just not the same player. And he's only 35. There's guys playing till they're 42 nowadays. So he's not technically old in the QB sense. So for him to drop off a cliff like this is kind of crazy. The issue with the Broncos goes a lot further than Russell Wilson, though. It's a systemic issue where the defense, that was one of the vaunted defenses a couple years ago where you're like, oh man, this, the offense might not be that great, but the defense will keep them in games. Now they don't really have that defense that you're afraid of anymore. Bradley Chubb left, Von Miller left. You got what? Patrick Surtain and who?
Justin Simmons and at least a couple of some interesting.
That's like it.
Yeah,
and they just got torched. Obviously the last time that this amount of points was scored in a game was like 1966 or something. So we haven't been alive to see this kind of thing happen before. And by the way, McDaniels took it a little bit easy at the end. He could have set that record. He didn't. He could have kicked that last field goal, set the 73 record, and called it a day. And it could have been more points, which is telling about the situation there in Denver. But I will say that they do have a bright spot in Marvin Mims. I'm a big fan of him.
Oh, yeah. And I said this before, before the season started, is I thought Marvin Mims was a really good steal in the draft because I watched his highlights in Oklahoma. I think the kid is legit. So again, you're not feeling like you're doing anybody any favors when you have, Cortland Sutton, who had a number of injuries. Tim Patrick now has a number of injuries, and you've got Jerry Jeudy. Here's the thing. I mean, I think the hardest thing is because you look at Jerry Jeudy. How much of the production are you truthfully going to get? Because I loved his stuff in Alabama. And I thought, okay, pretty interesting. He's kind of taller. He's got some good length. He might be, a deep threat. And then once they picked up Marvin Mims, a little smaller, but he gives you some good route running skills, could have been something. So even if you're Denver and you feel like you kind of had to make these moves when deep down, I know they're kind of hurting that they don't want to do that because of how just of how fresh this is, but if it's something you got to do, I mean that, but again, I'm not crazy for thinking that, like, as far as when you first traded for Russell Wilson, you should have just given him an arbitrary contract. Give him 1 year. That's what a lot of these franchises do. That's why Kansas City thrives and San Francisco and even Philadelphia. Philadelphia stole arguably one of the best linebackers who had the most tackles with the Chargers and only got him for 1 year. Like, it's not that much. So it's like, even if you got to do that, you don't know what Russell Wilson could be capable of. But I felt like it was new. They got too much into the hype, and now they're paying the price for this.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of funny that they thought that bringing Russell Wilson over would be the cure when the wide receiver core that he was working with in Seattle was far superior to the wide receiver core that he's working with here. You got Tyler Lockett, who is a very good wide receiver, like 1,000 yards every season. And then you got DK Metcalf, who is just an absolute monster of a human. And he wasn't winning games with them. So I don't know why they thought that this was a good thing, but I will say, as a Chargers fan, I'm not the most disappointed to see the demise of the Broncos.
Neither am I. I mean, especially with division rivals like that. Yeah, I'm not either. But again, it's just one of those things that, you look at coaching. I mean, again, Sean Payton was obviously hoping for that Charger job to be open. That's what he was really, really hoping for.
He wanted that, yeah.
But unfortunately, ownership kind of was, the roadblock. But then he gets into Denver and says, look, we got to clean this mess up. And again, Javon Holland spoke about this and thought about how disrespectful it was to keep Russ in the game. But to me, as a coach, I understand why. Because it's trying to set an example of, like, look, this is what will happen if you cannot get your head out of your what. And you literally have to show, because they're paying you this much and this is the performance you're giving for fans. That's unacceptable.
Absolutely. And I feel bad for Sean Payton, and I feel bad for us because we have to deal with Brandon Staley, which
Mhm.
tried to lose that Vikings game. But anyway,
I'm gonna get into that a little later
yeah,
on. There's a bunch of stuff that I was
it's
like,
a cover.
"Oh, yeah, awful lot of them," but we'll take
Yeah,
our break and we'll get to them pretty quickly, but,
for
um,
sure.
yeah. So, of course, for all of you guys that are looking for your seat to your next big event, whether it's the next sporting event or if it's the next concert or such, SeatGeek is the official sponsor of the Snake Sports Talk Show, where you could find your best seats wherever they may be at the most affordable price. I know when you look online, ticket prices are madly expensive. We know that. But SeatGeek, with their promises, is that they will find your next big event and your best seat in the house at the most affordable price. And SeatGeek has been very, very well known as far as the best affordable ticket pricing sale, at least in the industry. So go on to SeatGeek.com, and when you do, for your first ticket purchase, use promo code Snake Sports and save yourself $20 off of your purchase. That is Snake Sports, $20 off at SeatGeek.com. Download the app on your smartphone through Google Play and the App Store. That is SeatGeek.com. Promo code Snake Sports for $20 off.
Bobby Montagna on the Beantown Breakdown, Saturdays at 8:30 a.m. Eastern, 5:30 Pacific on Sports Wave Network.
Key Williams and Dante Criswell star in 7200 Seconds podcast Tuesdays at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 Pacific on Sports Wave Network.
Snake Sports Talk Show is sponsored by Muscle Tech, with hundreds of supplements and vitamins to choose from, all packed with 100% all-natural proven ingredients. You can be sure that Muscle Tech will give you the edge and the boost to train and look like your fit and healthy best, whatever your goals are. Try Muscle Tech today and use promo code SNAKESPORTS to save 30% off your purchases. Robert Lyle hosts Between the Lines podcast, Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific on Sports Wave Network.
Ooh, I am definitely feeling a little dangerous, other than Russell Wilson feeling a little bit dangerous here. Jake the Snake back with you here on the Snake Sports Talk Show. By the way, for those that are wondering, I do, however, do a little skid of my own, basically called Snake Bites. You can find that on the Wisdom app. Wisdom, it's chock full of really good, smart minds up out there. So the Snake Sports Talk Show, of course, has Snake Bites on the Wisdom app. That's going to be Monday nights and Thursday nights, right after our football game. I'm excited about it. So, so this week was really, really good for Taylor and I. I felt really good with the fact of our betting picks, and I mean, like I said, he's got the edge already, and this is in 3 weeks. Okay, and already I'm starting to kind of see, a lot of truths that are kind of coming out with, a lot of teams. But just to kind of pull up here real quick, but I just felt like a lot of these like just a ton of these games, they were exciting, they were interesting. But here's one that I really want to say. I don't think Daniel Jones is the guy in New York. I have been in New York 6 times in my life. The fan base, the town, everything you can honestly love about New York. It's beautiful. And again, I look at it as a vacation destination. I really wouldn't rather live there. That's just me personally. Because imagine that. You got JP Morgan up in your face every single day, Wall Street, not to mention too, you got all, the big time namers that are up in New York, which respectfully, I mean, you look at Stephen A. Smith, you look at a lot of these big time cats. I respect a lot of them. In fact, I love the professional work they do. But New York is very tough to carry yourself around because it's a big time city, because there's a high amounts of expectation. Why do you think that Jet fans really are expecting so much more out of Zach Wilson? Because they have not found their franchise quarterback all until Aaron Rodgers arrived. When Aaron got in the building, the vibe felt so good until 5 minutes into the first game of the season. Down he goes, out with an ACL injury. He's done for the season. It's hard. It's hard to carry upon all that way. But the Giants are so interesting because, first of all, I watched them against San Francisco. It was atrocious. But it just told you a lot about how really good Kyle Shanahan's coaching tree really is. Defensively, offensively. I've got all-stars all over the place. And, and Brock Purdy, he's distributing the football. Brock Purdy was a 7th-round pick. The Giants took Daniel Jones, 1st round, 6th overall out of Duke. What does that tell you? Look at some of the products that you see in the NFC. Jalen Hurts was a 2nd round. Dak was a 4th rounder. Brock Purdy, 7th rounder. It was an awful lot of late round picks. The Giants used their 1st round pick on Daniel Jones, who clearly looks and almost feels at least a worse side of Eli Manning. But respectfully, Eli's got 2 Super Bowls. But regardless of this, New York is high money market, which means there is no room for failure. I just saw the Yankees miss the postseason for the first time in years. But that's because the Yankees, they don't know how to build a lot of their young talents because they're so used to buying them. For the Giants, since Tom Coughlin left, it's been a mess. It's been a circus show. And on top of all of this, you bring in Brian Daboll, another smart coach who wanted, honestly, the Chargers gig because he knew a couple people that were in the organization. Okay, and imagine that. You're coming off of a rookie year with Justin Herbert. That offense would have been explosive with Brian Daboll. Not to mention, he's coming off of a year when building up Josh Allen. So here he is with Daniel Jones. Giants get to the playoffs last year, and that was great coaching all the way around. But then Daniel Jones gets the bag, way too much for him to carry, and the Giants are honestly faltering. I mean, this is just in bad shape. They got no receivers outside of Darren Waller. So how could you possibly end up, expecting this offense to really play? Here's the thing. Week 1, they scored 31. They got better, but they made that game so close, and they were trailing 20-0 at half against the Cardinals. And then Thursday night game against San Francisco, they got annihilated at 30-12. And they've got the fewest offensive points than a lot of teams in the league. So that tells you a lot that Daniel Jones, he can't handle the bag, and he's not the answer. So what else do you really have to sell me on this? I've seen so much of Daniel Jones. I do think that he does move out of the pocket multiple times, but you got to get the ball out of your hands. You got to be smart with a lot of your throws. You got to learn to overcome a lot of pressures. New York is pressurizing. That's why everybody expects so highly about, the Giants, the Jets, the Mets, the Yankees. I mean, hell, we're not even expecting too highly of the Rangers and the Islanders, and they're playing great. They've been playing really, really good. The Islanders were making it into the Stanley Cup playoffs multiple times, and then, the Rangers, I don't know what's going to happen with them now with Peter Laviolette, but that first year with Gerard Gallant, they made it into the Eastern Conference Final. So high expectations, no matter where you are, and especially when it comes to relationships and businesses. You got to learn to be resilient, and you got to be learning to putting your head down, and you just got to work. You got to work past those trenches. It gets harder, but in the end, it gets better over time. Daniel Jones is not the answer. I think honestly for the Giants, if this is as bad of performances that the Giants are doing right now, then go and get your next quarterback. I'm looking at a bunch of them. Michael Penix Jr., Caleb Williams, if you get that lucky, or you go and, you get, next year's quarterbacks, because I know Shedeur Sanders is really, really good and a couple of others. So you've got quarterback products, but maybe take a risk, because again, you're not obligated to anything with Daniel Jones, but this is now the hard part. Brian Daboll, unfortunately, has to clean this mess. I feel for Brian Daboll. This is it's got bad written all over it, and I don't even know what else to really kind of think of with this. But he's not the answer through and through. They need to find a next quarterback. Again, they got several of them right now in college. I would rather, if I'm Brian Daboll, just, swallow the pill this year. Get yourself at least a quarterback, because clearly you're going to be making some sort of deal, and nobody's really going to honestly take Daniel Jones unless you're the Jets or the Bears. Those are maybe the only ones. But you're not going to sell yourself up onto this point that Daniel Jones is the guy. I've heard enough of this. I've seen enough of this. He's just not to my liking to building a franchise. Taylor with the news.
This is the Hot Press.
What is up, guys? We have a lot of news and updates for the NFL. First one, unfortunately, our wide receiver, Chargers, Mike Williams, out for the season with an ACL tear. Not exactly ideal. Hopefully, he gets a good recovery in, but that's unfortunate.
Hey, next man up. Next man up.
Next man up. Hopefully, QJ comes to play.
Yeah, this is why. And again, the Chargers franchise makes it so complicating that when it needs to be. And honestly, Justin Herbert is honestly putting up MVP numbers. He has yet to allow a turnover. And they're good. They're putting up, they put up 50 points before this game. And so now I think, what are they at 74 points now on offense? That's not their problem. They know
how to put points.
Yeah, they're putting the points. And what was the one thing, I will say this. This is why you drafted wide receiver in the first round, because where was the issue? Health. And, it was health and building that wide receiver room. Because once Jalen Guyton went down and, a couple of wide receivers, you were asking, DeAndre Carter and Josh Palmer. Well, by the way, I love Josh Palmer. I think he's a kid who really does step up when times are desperate and you need to. And DeAndre Carter, a kick returner, he stepped up to the plate when he did. And that's why, the Raiders, they found something valuable in him, which I did too. But the one thing I will say, when I broke down Quentin Johnston, what I really, really loved was his yards after catch play. He has only played less than 25% of the plays, which, again, it's a heavy room. But then you're also expecting Jalen Guyton to start coming back. I think Quentin Johnston, this is the perfect time, because he's got the same size, or at least a little bit taller, and I think he's got a little bit more of a reach. So this could be something interesting for the Chargers, that if in fact, you're looking to make a deal somewhere, maybe in the off season, because again, they're not going to keep this wide receiving core for long. After a few injuries, it's tough now to kind of come back from. But I think Quentin Johnston, go ahead. Division rival game. Show the Raiders who you really, really are. I think that's going to be one that the Raiders are going to probably be scared of the second he plays full time.
Yeah, they just they need to find a way to get him into open space, maybe some slants, maybe some crossing routes, stuff like that, to where he can just take it to the house and really use that yak that he's good at. We'll see if it translates to the NFL like it did in college. Hopefully it does.
Yep.
All right, the next update that we have is Nick Chubb. Obviously, he's out for the season. We all knew this. but he didn't tear as many ligaments as they thought he did. He only tore an MCL, which is a big thing for Nick Chubb because that looked like a career ender, and it happens to not be. It's the simple MCL tear. I don't know if you knew this, but he also did that same thing in college. Where he tore his MCL, PCL, ACL, everything. So the fact that it's only one ligament that he has to repair is very good news.
And here's the thing, that's a good positive news for the Browns in their future because, again, I love Nick Chubb. I know a lot of people, like when we initially talked about it with, breaking down valuable running backs, he is Cleveland football. Like Cleveland has thrived on running backs. I mean, all the way from, Jim Brown to, I remember when Jamal Lewis, when he came out of Baltimore, he was still good in Cleveland. Yeah. And then, a bunch of others. Now, of course, they had some sprinkles of like some Peyton Hillis and, a couple of these guys. But Nick Chubb is what gives you the ground and pound. He's the guy that kind of gives you more of the grit that I'm not going to stop running until I score. Like it's that kind of mentality.
He's an X factor for sure.
Yeah, and again, to bringing back Kareem Hunt was a smart thing because you never wanted to lose this dynamic duo of both these runners. So I thought that was the right idea to do. But yeah, when I watched that same one in college, when I watched him play with him and Sony Michel, to re-aggravate the same knee is that is very hard, but he dodged a massive bullet up on that. Yeah. But I just say get well soon, Nick Chubb. And, and again, very good positive news for Cleveland fans.
Absolutely. Gus Edwards, unfortunately, in the concussion protocol, he left the game early. These are usually 1 week, 2 week things that they get over quickly. So hopefully he does as well. But man, that Ravens backfield just cannot stay healthy for the life of them. And it's been the same thing for the last couple years.
So here's my thing, because J.K. Dobbins could very much be valuable when healthy. Because I watched him in college.
And he's great when healthy.
Oh, he's great. But my only thing is, if you're the Ravens, this is a very tough division, and they don't like to lose a lot. But if you're in a position to where you got the amount of wins to where maybe you might take a division or you might take a wild card, is that crazy for me to think that I think the Ravens could very much be in the mix of potentially in the mid part of the first round or maybe the second round? They may end up finding a running back because honestly, they have not found a solution to running back since Ray Rice. A lot of these running backs have been getting hurt. They have not stayed healthy on the field, and it makes it so Lamar Jackson reliant on his feet that even last season, they were great. I think, what were they, at an 8-3 start? And then all of a sudden Lamar Jackson goes down and they were not the same.
Yep. They couldn't keep it going. Maybe they pick up another weapon on offense, hopefully, but only time will tell. They keep on just going back to the same injury-prone guys, so I guess we'll have to see.
Yeah, and again, they fight, but I just thought that loss to the Colts was just
that was bad. Was bad.
I mean, you saw this coming, but to me, I was kind of like, okay, maybe Baltimore's kind of brewing something up here. But then in the end, it was just like, it didn't feel like there was enough firepower. Guys kept getting hurt left and right, and it's like, I don't know who put an injury plague on this franchise, but this is just not really like look good. But they're still strong as long as the team, they fight. They got no quit in them, but maybe that's because of just the environment they are in the AFC North. That's usually how they are.
Absolutely. All right, we got our next guy. It's going to be Bryce Young. He's dealing with an ankle injury still. He's still questionable for this week 4. Honestly, I think that they're not going to play him. Andy Dalton actually looked fantastic. He threw for almost 400 yards, hooked up with Adam Thielen and DJ Chark on multiple long passes. Look, give the kid some time. Let him, get his ankle injury resolved and keep Andy Dalton out there. You guys aren't winning many games this season anyway.
Yeah, I'm going to put a small note after we're done with news, but Andy Dalton is very serviceable. Okay,
absolutely.
Here's the thing about it. He has such an interesting career track record because of the fact that we just remember him as being, the Red Rifle, or more preferably beige water pistol in Cincinnati. But but he really does, bring a serviceable type of production, at the quarterback, which is what you need. Did you just see what the Jets ended up picking up? Trevor Siemian? Really? Like, I know that the hardest part that the Jets are dealing with is because don't want to pay X amount of money for at least a serviceable quarterback. And now they're saying, like, they're trusting Zach Wilson, which, again, I totally understand it from an organizational standpoint, but even he's not the answer. And then now you bring in Trevor Siemian, and it's like, okay, you're kind of platooning the quarterback here, but, I mean, serviceable quarterbacks I know in this league, Nick Foles, Andy Dalton. I also do think in some spurts, when you really, really need it, I mean, and any given Sunday, I think you'd say Gardner Minshew would be good as just a serviceable back.
Yeah.
Mike White literally came in on an Miami, and he looked good, which is why. And think about it this way: Kansas City, they kept Chad Henne. In fact, the Jets were reaching out to him, which I don't know why, but he's a serviceable backup in case of anything, because all he has to do is execute the plays. Smart, like, he's older, and what does he really have to prove if he's got Patrick Mahomes as his main quarterback? But I thought Andy Dalton did really good, and I would not aggravate the injury, which is what I'll talk about in a short second once we get done with the news.
Joe Burrow still dealing with a calf injury. We all saw it last night. Didn't look well. It's not fully healed. Somebody reported that they were even talking about putting him on IR, which isn't great. Look, I've torn that same calf muscle. He came back within 2 weeks after that. I'm no superstar athlete, but it took me like a month and a half to actually be able to like really walk on that again. I don't care what kind of athlete you are. A calf tear or a calf strain, you have to move and you have to get tackled by 300-pound individuals. Look, take a week off because you're losing games with you in there anyway. So you might as well take a week off.
But part of that is, desperation from the franchise. I mean, Joe Burrow said it best. I mean, when he had his post-game conference, I mean, he was like he wasn't going to end up missing it because there was just a risk-reward kind of thing, because your risk is you're risking your calf, which is your Bengals franchise. That's what it is. And then the other part is the reward. You're not 0-3. So it's like, again, do you take the chance where you drop another game, you're 0-3, you're looked at, oh, well, the Bengals aren't making the playoffs, or do you save yourself the sake of the argument, rest your calf, because that's your franchise quarterback? Okay?
I'd rather go 0-4, let him stay on IR for 4 weeks, and because he didn't win that game for them last night.
Oh no,
the defense won that game. The Rams looked like they just didn't look well in the red zone. But if they capitalize on the opportunities, they had so many opportunities in the red zone to score. They just didn't.
Now, I'll tell you
the Rams should have won that game.
I'll tell you what, though. Wait until Cooper Kupp comes back healthy, because that's going
to be a gross offense.
I've got him, and I've got this rookie Puka Nacua. Like the Rams are going to figure it out, because Sean McVay is very smart at trying to find a way. He'll figure this out. But I think you did yourself a favor, because what was the biggest thing we talked about with the Rams in the offseason? The wide receiver room's kind of a little bit thin. Who do you really trust about this? Puka Nacua already in 3 weeks has literally showed really good stuff. That's why I'm waiting until he gets his first receiving touchdown. He has not gotten that yet, but he's given us good spurts of, I've got another tough receiver that's there. Tutu Atwell is just as serviceable. He's not great.
Serviceable, yeah.
But
he's fast.
But at least, Cooper Kupp, when he comes back, he's going to come back to a perfectly healthy, roster, and they'll figure out the red zone at some point. But yes, I'm the same boat with you with Joe Burrow. I would not be risking the rest of my franchise because, again, look at a lot of franchises that have not had a huge train of success. Chicago, the Bengals, the Lions, a lot of these franchises. But these are desperation modes that screw you out of potentially changing the culture of your franchise.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. Speaking of quarterbacks that are injured, Derek Carr updated. He has a shoulder injury and it's an AC joint injury. That's not great for them. They said that it's actually a day-to-day or week-to-week kind of thing. So it apparently isn't going to be something that it's kind of like a hamstring where you don't know whether or not he's going to play or not. Honestly, Jameis Winston has ran the offense before, and he's a gunslinger, and that defense is good enough to keep you in games. I don't see why you play Derek Carr the next 2 weeks. Just let Jameis do his thing. He's a gunslinger. He'll get things done, and that defense is good enough to back it up.
Yeah, I think so too. And like I said, I think this is an offense that could be fitting for both Jameis and potentially for Carson Wentz if that was the case. But, I think you're right about that. If you bring Jameis Winston back up on this and have him run this offense, he's familiarized with it. He's been under Dennis Allen since last year. So, but now, having Chris Olave, in his second year, and then potentially other offensive pieces, plus two. Alvin Kamara at some point is going to end up coming back. So there's some things you can kind of have some positivity on, but, kind of hurtful for the Saints.
We got a few defensive players here. We got Nick Bolton, ankle injury. Look, a lot of people might not know that name, but on the defense of the Chiefs, he is a big name for them.
Yep.
And he is a very good player. So losing him to an ankle injury, it doesn't say how severe it is, but losing him for any amount of time isn't great. It's not losing Chris Jones, but it's losing a very solid player. We also have Trayvon Diggs out with a torn ACL. We know this from the last week, but unfortunately, he's out for the season, and it really showed in that secondary against the Cardinals. Let's see. We got Brandon Ayuk, shoulder. He was injured last week. He was actually seen at practice on Monday, so hopefully he gets a couple more days of practice in, and he'll be able to return to playing within the next week.
Yeah, I think San Francisco, Brandon Ayuk. I mean, San Francisco's got some serviceable weapons, and they still got Deebo Samuel that's right there and good, But at least with Brandon Ayuk back, they're still going to score up an awful lot of points. But, yeah, I mean.
They're chugging along.
Yeah, they're chugging along. It's effortless at this point.
Absolutely. We got Jimmy G in concussion protocol as well.
Yeah.
Not great. It's looking like this week is going to be a no-go if he does have a concussion. It hasn't been confirmed yet, but usually once you enter concussion protocol, that's a week-long thing. So probably not going to be available for the Chargers game this week, which is good for us. But unfortunately, Austin Eckler is still dealing with that ankle injury. So they actually said, they kind of had like a cryptic message during one of the media one of the press conferences with the coach, and he said that Austin Eckler will see in the next couple of weeks how he's feeling. So it kind of seems like they're probably going to hold him out until the bye week, which is week 5, and then he might come back for that Cowboys game, but that'll be a tough game to come back to.
Yeah, it will, and I think, for the Raiders, because, that last game against Pittsburgh was just not that great. And by the way, they had a kid that they drafted late round, Aiden O'Connell. I've seen some really good stuff. He had a really good preseason. So
he did.
And I think even if you plug him in this offense, and I'm not saying that this could potentially happen, but parts of me wants to go with the Chargers, but there's parts of me that I'm just looking at that defense and how close of a cough up that was against Minnesota. And if it goes this way, I'd rather be taking the points, but again, anything could basically happen. And again, if I go that route, I don't know what I'm going to get with the Chargers. That's the problem. And we're betting guys, so it's like, again, I screwed myself of the Bears and Cowboys, which basically screwed both of us. But again, I didn't think that game was going to go this way. But all the Swiftie fans are all just happy of the fact that the Chiefs have really showed up, and then just the Bears are just crying themselves asleep.
Absolutely. The last one that we got on our injury report is Anthony Richardson. It looks like he is going to be good to go this week. He's over the concussion. Hopefully, he doesn't go out there and run into a brick wall again. But yeah, it looks like he's good to go.
Yeah, I love watching this kid play, and I do think that again that was a very tough matchup. And I think what are they 2-1 now? Because they won that last game against the Texans. So how about that? And the Colts are being 2-1 right now. Now I'm not getting all my hopes on the Colts right now because of just how wonky that South Division is. But okay.
The defense is decent, and Anthony Richardson, when he plays, he looks nice. He can pass the ball. He can run the ball.
Yeah, he looks promising of what a quarterback is supposed to be. But again, this is no coincidence to somebody like Shane Steichen. He's dealt with this before, so he looks really, really good. That's why I'm like, okay, comes back from concussion protocol. He'll be ready to go. Let me see who are they playing? They're playing the Rams, and they're favored -1. I don't know.
That's a tough game to call right there.
I think I might take the Rams and the points there. I'm not saying that, again, I just think because I'm watching two real good stories. I'm watching the Colts with Anthony Richardson and Shane Steichen. And then I'm watching the Rams of when will Cooper Kupp be ready to roll, because this Puka Nacua kid really is stepping up in a lot of big ways. And Matthew Stafford, again, he's saying he has not connected with these young players. It kind of seems like it looks just fine. So I think I'll take the points on that. I think that's going to be a really good game to keep an eye on. But I don't know if I really am going to want to go with the favorites up on the Colts. But that's just going to be an interesting game to watch.
Absolutely.
All right, Taylor with the news.
This is the hot press.
So one thing I will say with Taylor and I is basically what we mentioned about the that calf injury with Joe Burrow is that calf is literally the Bengals franchise. Like there is no question. And like we talked about when it came to certain injuries, is that are you really going to risk your franchise for the next 5 years because of one calf strain that eventually is going to end up tearing, and all risking it for something that is like we just got to get a win in the column? I mean, look at a lot of your franchise quarterbacks. The ones that I would be daunted that they got hurt. Last year, Justin Herbert had cracked ribs. Okay, and he played all through that. That's excruciating. For the Chargers, you really have to do right for Justin Herbert. And for Joe Burrow, not quite as amazing and flashing of a defense like they once had. It still played really good this past weekend, but an offensive line that's still letting through guys up on there, and then the Cavs, like, this is where you got to really do right with Joe Burrow. And at the same time, you look at a lot of these franchises that does not have a full track record of successes. And a lot of them, they all have their flaws. But if you're watching the blueprints of the Niners and the Chiefs and bits and pieces of the Eagles and a bunch of these other teams, it's really not that complicating. A lot of these franchises, they literally make this kind of look a little bit more complicating than such. I mean, Taylor, like I said, I look at the calf strain, and like you said, and what I mentioned as well, is that you don't want to risk your franchise for the next 5 years because of one win, and you're desperate of just trying to get in the playoffs. Just set yourself up more for success. Again, Justin Herbert being the exception of this ruling because he played with cracked ribs in week 2 and suffered all through that, and then to come out and say, oh, he had a torn labrum. Okay, that now, and that's the thing. That's why I'm like, if this is not shown to your franchise, like, hey, this is important, man. Like, we need to protect and we need to support our franchise quarterbacks. That's why Kansas City is so good. San Francisco doesn't even have to worry about their quarterbacks because they're not paying them anything. And they placed, Pro Bowlers and future Hall of Famers all around him. Philadelphia's offense is not the same as it once was last year.
It
But
really isn't.
good God, that defense with Jalen Carter and then you've got Nolan Smith, like that gives you something. It's telling you that like Jalen Hurts doesn't have to always play his best football. He just has to distribute. And sometimes too, that can win you championships. But again, you just have to have a supportive culture. And if that's the case, I mean, hopefully the Bengals do the right thing for Joe Burrow on this, but I'm not risking my franchise quarterback. I'd be like, those are ones that like I'm not picking up the phone for if you have a sweetened deal that you're trying to throw at me because this is my guy that I know is going to take us to the promised land. That's what every team in the NFL has, that kind of feeling. So
absolutely. And Joe Burrow, like the calf won't end his season, right?
yeah.
But him not being able to be mobile and get away from large people and get away from any sort of pressure, and him just having to take the hit, that's what's going to get that man decapitated. Like you can't let a person, it's one thing to play with cracked ribs, right?
Yep.
Because you're still mobile, you can still get away from things. It's another thing to play with anything in your legs where you're just not as mobile as you could be. It's asking for Joe Burrow to get a concussion or to tear something, to crack a shoulder from getting sacked. He took a nasty hit. The other night. He took a nasty hit. Thankfully it was a cornerback and not like Aaron Donald or something, but yeah, he got whapped, and it's like, get that guy out of there.
Oh yeah. 100%. And again, I think that, with injuries like that on the lower body, they change a lot. That's why I'm like, when we mentioned about that too with Dak Prescott in the preseason, because he was feeling a lot of those lower bodies and he was throwing picks. Those usually play a massive role because of your pivot. And if you screw that up, that's not the same. That's where they expect a lot of their power from the ground up to really give them the right accurate release. So, because you're not going to just throw this frontward. This is not 70s football. Everybody's all, leaning on the back foot. Give yourself enough time to where it's a beautiful, perfect release, short pass or deep ball passes. That's why you got to plan. And guys that feel that, it sometimes it really does wreck in their careers. But that's where I'm like, yeah, I wouldn't risk it. I seriously.
Yeah, not at all.
All right. So this weekend was really, really fun to watch. Caught at least a couple of these games. Yeah, I was up in Utah, slaying away some fish while, of course, Keenan Allen was slaying away some of these games. But we're going to end up breaking over every single one of them down. Taylor and I, of course, will be doing that. So here we go as far as our prime predictions and summing up a lot of these games. So first, the Thursday night football game. Giants 49ers rushed on Jones. You guys rushed really fast on Daniel Jones. Why do you think Saquon Barkley feels so pissed at the fact that you paid $45 million a year for a quarterback that just plays average? He's good on script, but he's not an off-scripted thrower. I mean, just like what we say about Russell Wilson. You pay this much money to just be a scripted thrower and not somebody that – I want guys that are off-scripted. I watched a bunch of those guys play this weekend, but Daniel Jones, not the answer. And again, this just clearly shows the Niners in 3 weeks have scored 90 points. They have not changed that 30-point number. But the other thing is that I don't think they're the kind that really want to have an onslaught like what, the Dolphins and the Chiefs literally put on. They're more of get a comfortable lead, let's shut it down, and let's start playing some smart football. That's what Kyle Shanahan, I think, this year has really, really come down to. It was a great 49ers performance, but I think we rushed way too fast on Daniel Jones.
Absolutely. The 49ers are an elite team. It shows. They haven't taken a step back. Brock Purdy looks absolutely fantastic still, and they have a slew of offensive weapons, and the defense is stellar. What more could you want?
Yeah. Falcons, Lions to start Sunday. Knock that off. Well, apparently they stopped the run. Bijan Robinson wasn't really, rushing his best. And in the first 2 weeks, that's been Atlanta's juice between him and Tyler Algier. Detroit, they're trying to give another chance for their defensive coordinator because, again, he has been letting away a lot of these points because that last game in overtime against Seattle was a terrible taste in their mouth. But they come in, NFC South opponent, shut them down on their run. That's the one thing. You got to shut them down on what they're very much used to because Desmond Ridder, I think he's a good kid, but there are some limitations that he does. I thought Dan Campbell, the defense played really good. Jared Goff had some good, some good throws up on his end. But again, they're just waiting until Jameson Williams does come back. But Amon-Ra St. Brown, we're still getting at least some stuff from there. But Detroit did pretty good this weekend.
Yeah, Detroit looks good. And you know who I really like on that offense? Sam Laporta. That guy's getting peppered with targets, and he's really good. Like, he's a breath of fresh air. I'm really happy to see that a rookie tight end could just come in and step into a role that most tight ends just don't do that.
Here's what's funny about that. Sam Laporta, Iowa product. TJ Hawkinson, Iowa product. Iowa just seems to be tight end factory.
They grow them different out there.
Oh, man. I mean, good God. I mean, you watch TJ Hawkinson and Noah Fant, and then you got Sam Laporta. I love what Iowa's doing, and again, this is a funny thing because Chicago, even though they're not great on quarterbacks, they're great on tight ends, they're great at running backs. That's the only thing that they're really great at on offense. But it's like I look at them and it's like it's almost similarly to Iowa. But these Iowa kids, man, corn-fed, they're strong, and they get open. Yeah. I mean, George Kittle, an Iowa product himself. And I'm like, these guys, they have such a personality on them that every time when I watch them when they translate in the NFL, I mean, good for Iowa to really have these productive tight ends because not for them. I mean,
don't know if we'd have many productive tight ends, but also, like you said, the Falcons. I feel like the Falcons should tank and go get themselves a good quarterback because on 100%. Offense they have Bijan, they have Cordell Patterson, which a lot of people are like whatever on him. I think he's a great player. They got Kyle Pitts and they got Drake London. They have offensive weapons. They don't have somebody that can distribute the ball. They need to do something about that.
I mean, Michael Vick 2.0 with Michael Penix. I can kind of see that a little bit. I mean, kind of, rejuvenate a little bit of that, vibe in Atlanta. I like it.
Absolutely.
New Saints and Packers, too close to love. Man, I thought, here's the thing. As close as that game was, I got to give props to Jordan Love because Green Bay knows how to protect their quarterbacks, which is one of those things that Aaron Rodgers, I know he was going to feel because they do have a top 15 offensive line. They've given him enough time in the pocket to throw. And let me be honest, these young receivers with Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs, you're building something really interesting. It may end up taking off at least, in the second or third year of this thing, but I think Green Bay did a fantastic job keeping it close. Matt LaFleur found a way to execute against a defensive coach. But again, I'm hoping Derek Carr stays healthy. It's a crushing blow. But again, New Orleans is not even really winning or losing these close games. They've kept it close enough to where that defense is actually producing. So I'm like, NFC, watch out for the Saints a little bit. They could be some spoilers this year.
Absolutely. The Saints defense is nice. It keeps them in games. Once Derek Carr, if he stays healthy, or Jameis Winston figures out the offense, if they could just figure it out, you got Chris Olave, Michael Thomas, you got Alvin Kamara coming back. Like, if you can figure that out, they can do something in the NFC for sure.
Oh, yeah. You're going to love this, Taylor. Texans, Jags, Stroud, throw it all out. CJ Stroud already in 3 weeks. This kid's already gotten, passing yards that look really, really good. I mean, it made Jacksonville look silly, but here's what I liked about, the Texans versus the first 2 weeks they've had. they're a team that doesn't quit. I think that's part of it, that D'Amico Ryans knows this franchise. I thought the defense played superb in a bunch of areas. John Mechie, by the way, that's a kid, that's a story. But, the other guy that I like, how about Tank Dell?
It looks great.
I'm not buying too deep into the Texans, but I'm kind of seeing a little bit of a trend here with the Texans. They're kind of buying into this young core group. I mean, how many times have we seen them, really fall apart? I feel good about the Texans, for this year.
CJ Stroud looks fantastic. The first week was a little bit shaky. The last 2 weeks have looked good. Tank Dell produced in college and is producing now. I'm actually really sad because I dropped him in my fantasy league. But they are looking really, really nice. I didn't think that the Jags would lose like this. Like, if they were going to lose, I figured it'd be a close game, but by 20 points, that's insanity. Especially because the Chiefs couldn't put up points against the Jaguars defense. So the fact that the Texans just came out and laid out a 40 burger is pretty impressive.
Oh yeah, 100%. Chargers Vikings, saved by the pick. I mean, Brandon Staley's defense is just so stale for me. I'm like, here's the thing. That pick saved Brandon Staley's job. And as every time, and Taylor and I know this, but this franchise, regardless, both him and I are like, just fire Staley already. But this ownership is just like, well, we're not going to quit. I don't care. Like, this defense, they gave up 36 points, 27 points, and 24 points. They are closest. I think they're in the bottom tiers of the most points they've given up by a defense this year in 3 weeks. What the hell? Like, I mean, this is not good. And again, this is an unproven defensive coordinator at the same time who supposedly is big on, DBs. I'm not seeing it. So I've had enough of this. And I'm just like, look, let Kellen Moore be the game manager, because he's clearly putting Justin Herbert in beautiful spots. I mean, look around. I mean, Keenan Allen threw a touchdown pass.
That was beautiful.
That's what I'm saying. This is creativity. I mean, when will this be enough is what we really ask of this franchise. Like, have we seen enough of this? I'm like, yeah. If it wasn't for that pick, Staley should have gotten the pink slip already that week, just before even going on the plane. Seriously.
Absolutely. Brandon Staley tried to lose that game. He tried to.
6 times.
It looked like it looked like he was 6 times. Like, it looked like he was legitimately trying to get fired, because especially that last 4th down, you're up by 4, punt the ball. I get it that your defense hasn't been playing well. Guess what? If your defense hasn't been playing well, you don't give the other team the ball on the 40-yard line. That's not what you do.
Funny
I
note.
just don't get it.
This next week, they're facing the Raiders. Have you not learned something from that play in particular as you're going into week 4 against the Raiders? Really? I don't know. I've seen enough of this. This is just eye gouging. Again, you crazy. Text me. You were like, I don't know if I'm going to watch any more of these games. I still am, because I love Justin. I'm watching this for Kellen Moore mostly, in particular, because that is it.
It's just that Titans game just really put a damper on my wanting to watch this team.
Oh,
it's tough. It is a tough watch.
Oh yeah, it really is. Colts, Ravens. Bug has hit. I mean, honestly, the injury bug. Gus Edwards now is hurt for the Baltimore Ravens. By the way, this game got close to overtime. Ravens fans wouldn't panic because of the fact that they got Justin Tucker, but for as many times as we watched this game go back and forth, and this is with a Gardner Minshew offense, so that's why I was kind of like, what in the world was this? What was this? I don't know how in the hell that the Colts even managed to get past it. But again, I thought the defense played really, really good. They limited a lot of plays for Lamar Jackson, but still, they could not get that run game going. And now Gus Edwards being out, this is just bad for their backfield right now.
Absolutely. The Ravens were supposed to be this big, dynamic passing offense now that they have a new offensive coordinator and they have all these weapons for Lamar. but we haven't seen it throughout 3 weeks. I know that they've won 2 of their games. I get it. They won one against the Bengals team that doesn't look like they can actually play football currently. But it's just kind of surprising to me that the Ravens offense is as stale as it has been. I get it that you have injuries to your running backs, but where's the passing? Where's that explosive attack that everybody was thinking was going to happen? And now Rashad Bateman's out too. So now you just have Zay Flowers and Mark Andrews, and you got to pray that something happens.
Yeah, exactly. Patriots, Jets. Bill me, please. Bill Belichick. He's loves young quarterbacks. But again, the Jets, in the last few times they faced against the Patriots, they have not figured it out. Bill Belichick loves feasting on young quarterbacks because of the fact that they get pressurized. But again, how about the fight from the Jets defense? I mean, they were keeping Mac Jones in a bunch of different spots. It was good. And again, it just doesn't serve them the justice that Zach Wilson quarterbacking, and it ain't Aaron Rodgers. And that's what's hard about this. But Belichick, and I thought Robert Saleh, very good defensive football that there was. But in the end, New England came out 5 points up on it. I'll take the points, man. And I thought that the Patriots did pretty good, especially with the young quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, this is classic Bill Belichick football right here, where you got a quarterback that can't throw the ball, and he is going to absolutely make it a nightmare for that human being during that game. I love the Patriots defense. I played them this week against the Jets because I just knew that they weren't going to put up points, and they didn't. And the Jets defense is just absolutely stellar. I wish that they just had an offense.
Oh, 100%. Bills, Commanders, Allen in command. I'm not downing the Buffalo Bills even after 2 weeks of this, because even after that embarrassing week 1 on Monday Night Football, which is what I kind of had a feeling of with that end, but that Bills offense looked really, really good. And again, it gave Sam Howell fits on that defense. I thought it was very impressive to the certain extent. Really good stuff. I do think that the Bills still have a chance. That's why I'm saying I do think this Bills team is a playoff team. Do we think it's still the same? There's a little bit of some stuff, but I thought this was a good weekend for Allen to really kind of bounce back these last 2 weeks.
Yeah, a lot of people wrote them off when they lost to the Jets in the first week. I didn't. I continued to think that they'd bounce back. I just know that Jets defense is something for real. And the Bills came out, they won against a team that they should have won against, and it wasn't even kind of close. That's the kind of performance that you expect to see out of the Bills. Now let's see them win against a team that is a top tier team in the NFL. That will be impressive. And I think they play the Dolphins this week, so that's a chance to prove themselves.
All right. This is going to be funny, but here we go. Broncos, Dolphins, RIP. Russ isn't perfect. Obviously, you already know exactly how Broncos country really feels right now. They died. Both Taylor and I paid our dues and our respects for them because, again, this is just embarrassing. But, I mean, Mike McDaniel, how did we even know that Mike McDaniel was the ball boy in Denver? I mean, how in the hell? That's
crazy.
That is insanity. And then again, I'm sure they probably swallowed a massive pill up on that because of just how creative and yet how fun this offense is. You had Mike White with a touchdown pass. You had a third, fourth stringer running back with that many rushing touchdowns. Good grief. And Vic Fangio really put a lot of hell in his former team. This is not good. This is not good. Like I said, I thought tickets, what were they? Average 140, 150. Now we're going to have to put them on rollback prices from Walmart for like $5 at this point.
Absolutely. The product there in Denver is not good. It's not a good watch. I guess if you're a diehard fan, you'll continue going to the games. But man, 70 points on somebody, like All I know is I can't wait for the Chargers to play him because I just expect a big week out of him that week. So,
oh God. Well, here's the thing though. That's a coin flip because again, that's just two franchises that they have their own flaws. It's gonna be interesting. But yeah, I think that the Broncos might get torched up on it.
70 points is insane.
Oh God, it's Madden numbers, man. Titans, Browns. Who them barking? Wow, I think that the Browns, I underestimated them. I love their pass rush. And, in the end, they got to the Titans and they got to Ryan Tannehill. I mean, I think it's time to really kind of question a lot about this with, their quarterback situation because they got Malik Willis. They've got Will Levis. Ryan Tannehill, I think, is just on the tail end. There's just not much of this thing to go left in the tank. I love Mike Vrabel, but look, Deshaun Watson is not the quarterback we once saw him in Houston, but I got to give him credit. He's distributing the football as much as he can, and he's leaving it to trusting that great pass rush of Zadarius Smith and Myles Garrett there up on that front. That is, I underestimated them. I think Cleveland's going to be very interesting, but it's like we talked about with wild card teams and teams in the hunt. They are starting to prove their case here in this one.
Absolutely. I expected this to be a really low scoring game. I'm actually surprised that the Browns even put up 27 points. I knew that the Browns were going to win, but 27 I thought was a lot because this Titans defense isn't bad. Like it's a very stingy defense. So the fact that they put up 30 points is actually kind of telling. And I think that they should have had an additional touchdown. Did you see that Amari Cooper
yeah
thing? That was crazy. That was a touchdown.
Oh, he wasn't even out of bounds.
No, he had like a foot between his foot and the out of bounds boundary. It was crazy. But
could do better than that with that.
Oh, they need to do better. The one thing that I'll say on both sides of the ball in this game is both sides just could not run the ball. That when somebody's playing this team, if they are just heavy on the run side, like the Falcons, for instance, it's going to be a tough game for that team. So, yeah, the Browns look good. Deshaun Watson looks bad, but maybe it's enough to go somewhere with that defense.
Interesting as we see it for this year. Panthers, Seahawks. Low-key fun. I thought it was actually a pretty fun game, to be honest. I mean, because Andy Dalton, he came in for Bryce Young, and I thought he looked pretty good. He actually had a couple of real good passes. It didn't really go Carolina's way, but Kenneth Walker, couple rushing touchdowns. By the way, Jackson Smith and Jigba is healthy, so it was slow, but just you wait until he literally learns his playbook. I think Geno Smith having a third weapon at that point. I mean, Pete Carroll, he loves his young kids. I mean, that's the thing that I think Seattle, going to be fun watch all the way through, but I thought this game was actually pretty fun on both sides.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun to watch. There was very little defense played. Kenneth Walker looked absolutely fantastic in this game. That man can run. When he's on the field, he is an absolute monster. Andy Dalton looked better than Bryce Young. And I think that if they continue to play Andy Dalton, they'll probably win more games. Bryce Young he needs a little bit of time. He needs a little bit of a breather. But yeah, very fun game to watch. And the Seahawks offense is starting to click, and I expect them to do just fine to probably get one of those wild card spots.
Yeah. Cowboys, Cardinals lost a Dobbs. Josh Dobbs literally just opened up the offense. By the way, how great was that one fake play that Micah Parsons got? Absolutely, that was actually a pretty impressive play. I like that. But here's the thing: this is what the Cowboys do to us all the time, every year. First 2 weeks, they hype us up, they get us sold up on it, and we thought, okay, they're coming into Arizona. It might be an interesting game, but it showed that Trayvon Diggs was a game changer. They lose him for the season, and now there's a little bit of an uh-oh at this point because now the Cowboys, they haven't even faced against a really like battle-hardened offense, but then they play the Cardinals, and this is the result we get. So again, Josh Dobbs, pretty good. He's not a franchise guy, but he's starting to become a serviceable quarterback, in my opinion, with this.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I watched most of that game, and man, Dobbs looked great. I will say that the score should be closer. Dak Prescott made the worst read in NFL history, throwing it between 3 people. I don't know what that man was thinking. Dak just does that sometimes. But that was a rough game for the Cowboys. Look, their defense, it's missing a few people. But the offense was clicking, and it just could not click against the Cardinals, which was kind of surprising. I'm wondering if the 2 offensive linemen that they're missing is really making that big of a difference. But CD didn't do anything. Pollard didn't do anything. It was a pretty hush-hush game for that offense.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Bears, Chiefs, look them Swifties. Boy, the Kansas City Chiefs, it was nothing but, obviously, Travis Kelce, I think, has probably the best support group, especially when it comes to, hey, I got the Bears in town, historic franchise. I want to set up a really good first date with Taylor Swift. And sure enough, his mom being there next to her in, the suite and then walking out. And this was really, it's a love story. Just say yes already, damn it. How many times do I have to really, revert this? This is killing me already. But I'll tell you what's really killing it. Justin Fields is really getting killed with this Chicago nonsense because, again, that I just thought I'd feel for Justin Fields. If I could have given him Mulligan, Jets, why didn't you just, pick him? I think it would have been a different scenario if this had been the case.
Absolutely. First of all, I don't know if you saw the picture of Kelce and Taylor after the game, but they were in that like drop top fucking the Cadillac. It looked awesome. I loved everything about it. But the Bears, like you said, it's an abysmal franchise. And if the Fields had gone to the Jets, that might actually be a feasible team right now. That might actually be a pretty exciting team to watch. But as it pans out, he just has no sort of support behind him, and it's unfortunate.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Sunday Night Football, Steelers-Raiders, too much wattage. I thought this defense on it, here's the thing. I love the Steelers defense. With TJ Watt and with a lot of real good pieces, the problem I have is just, Matt Canada's just not really the guy as an OC. But you know what? Has Josh McDaniels figured anything out since his tenure with Denver? I thought the play calling was just atrocious to begin with. Nothing against Jimmy Garoppolo, but he threw a lot of picks just before the concussion. That didn't really look very good on a Sunday Night Football game in Vegas to really kind of have that kind of production. But hey, Steelers stole away a win, and the defense just continues to prove that, hey, this offense needs to play a little bit better. But I thought it was great getting the close win. Yeah,
and the thing is the Steelers defense is so nice, right? I really like their defensive line. TJ Watt's an absolute monster.
Yep.
And Josh Jacobs could not run the ball against that defense. My thing is what was Josh McDaniels doing when they were in the red zone down by one single score? Why did they kick a field goal? They just needed a touchdown and a 2-point conversion. What was that decision making? I just don't understand that. It almost looked as bad as Brandon Staley going for it on fourth.
Oh my God.
It was really, really poor coaching.
Yeah, that's just piss poor coaching. And again, there's coaches who obviously fit the job description, and there's just some that look, it's okay if you're one of the greatest coordinators, that's fine, but sometimes you don't fit the job description, man. You're just not really going to be taken seriously. That was just bad. Good Lord. Eagles, Bucks. Baker baked out. So, first of all, Philly's offense doesn't look the same. But that doesn't seem to matter, and that doesn't seem to care with Nick Sirianni because he's confident in this team. I believe it was Sean Desai really is a damn good defensive coordinator, so they didn't really lose much with Jonathan Gannon. But here's what's funny. I was talking with a coworker of mine earlier, and they were like, isn't it funny that with Philadelphia, yet they still find ways to win? They've done the opposite this year than what last year was. Last year, had a great offense. Wasn't too big on defense with Jonathan Gannon. Now this year, got a great defense. Offense doesn't seem to be, clicking with Brian Johnson. No matter what, Jalen Hurts has had his back against the wall, and he's so used to this. And at least Nick Sirianni, at least he's got his back on this. That's why I think that they're so confident in the team. They're 3-0, and then, like I said, it's between them and San Francisco that run this conference in the NFC.
Absolutely. And, something that I've noticed over the past couple weeks is the Eagles don't care who is running the ball. Yep. They don't care. If it's DeAndre Swift, cool. If it's Gainwell, cool. If it's anybody, doesn't matter. They're going to have wide open holes for some reason to run the ball. Now, the passing attack isn't as good. It's just not clicking like it was last year.
Yep.
Hopefully within the next couple of weeks, they figure that out. A.J. Brown starts getting the ball placed in his hand a little bit better, whatnot. But the Bucs had a bad game, right? And it was raining. So
they were red hot coming into this game.
Yeah, they were red hot, and they had a bad game. It was raining. Mike Evans is a gigantic part of that offense, and when it's raining, it's a lot harder to get the ball to him. So, they put up 11 points. It was a rough game for them, but Eagles D did look very good.
Yeah, and side note, how good does DeAndre Swift look on this type of roster?
Man, he looked fantastic.
This is not the DeAndre Swift I would have seen in Detroit, but
no.
I love this. I mean, again, like the Eagles, this has been a long time coming since they even had a productive rusher. And now I feel like they kind of have one where he sets the tone. And Kenneth Gainwell and, the rest of them, they just follow right after. I think this is a really good thing for DeAndre Swift coming into Philadelphia.
Absolutely.
All right, and finally, Rams-Bengals. Oh, man. Kind of hard to say this, but of course it's like, save that cap. It's the only thing that I can honestly say because, again, this Bengals team, now, again, they snuck away with a win, but here's the part. The Rams had several times where they came back in the game, and they were literally doing everything they could to stay in this game. Sean McVay is very creative, so I'm not ready to write him off. Yes, they're 1-2, but they probably are the most interesting 1-2 team right now in the NFL. Puka Nacua is probably the best, the best thing that Cooper Kupp is looking for as a supportive wide receiver while he's hurt. They finally found it. But Cincinnati better be careful of themselves with this with their franchise quarterback because, again, be okay with just having him take some time off. I know it's, you got Jake Browning, but still, would you rather save that sake or would you really just risk it? And then all of a sudden now, what do you do in the next couple of years? I mean, good for the win, but I'm a little bit freaked out for Joe Burrow.
I don't love – so here's the thing. The Bengals coaching staff wanted to keep him out, but he campaigned to put himself in the game. Yep. I think sometimes I get that you want to make your players happy, so you let them make decisions for their own well-being. But in some instances, you should really look out for your player, and this is one of them. It's not a good idea to put him out there. He didn't look good. He might be vying to play, but he can't plant his foot. He can't move. He can't be the Joe Burrow that he needs to be.
Yeah.
So I don't love that he's campaigning for himself to get on the field when he just can't play up to his standards. They got lucky to get this win. Matthew Stafford, unfortunately, threw several picks. Stafford does that, but if you have Cooper Kupp out there, this game is probably a whole lot different than 16-19 shows.
Oh, 100%. It's a huge difference maker up there. But, yeah. Wow. What a really good bounce back week 3. Taylor and I had a really good week. By the way, week 4, some interesting games up on there, but at least we get the classic NFC North matchup
Love
on
it.
Thursday night. I love it. I mean, uh, who's your early pick? Because I'm a little like I don't know if I really as much and as tasty as the points are at -1.5. I don't know if whether I'm feeling some kneecaps or I'm feeling a little bit of love. I mean, what did you think?
Man, that game is hard to choose. For me personally, I want to go with the Lions. I trust the offense a little bit more there.
Mhm.
I'm on Raw. St. Brown will probably be locked up by Jair Alexander unless he's not healthy still. But I just don't see the offense on the Packers side of the ball. Christian Watson is out. What's the other guy? Dobbs. He's injured. He's banged up. They don't have like a crazy good offense, and Aaron Jones is also injured.
Mhm.
So I don't know. The Lions defense isn't great, but they can lock down this type of offense.
Now, what's so
So
hard about this is because you think historically, like how many times the Packers embarrassed the Lions, and mind you, this is in Lambeau, which is really going to be hard to play in. I mean, again, and think about how close that game was against New Orleans. They were facing against a proven defense. Um, Matt LaFleur, this is starting to feel a lot like his offense. It's not it's not Aaron Rodgers anymore. It's now starting to feel a lot more like, oh, this is why they hired Matt LaFleur. Now, again, LaFleur against NFC North opponents has a winning record against them. But look at the dysfunction for some of them. You're facing Chicago and Detroit twice a year. I love what Detroit has done, but this this feels to me like a wild card game. I'm
yeah, this
seriously thinking it.
is
And here's the other thing. You don't think the Packers in the back of their mind felt embarrassed in the last game of the season when they missed the playoffs against Detroit? I don't know, man. I'm almost kind of feeling like I'm feeling the love in
you
this
feeling
one.
Packer? You feeling Packers?
I'm kind of feeling a little bit of some payback here in this Thursday night.
I like it. I like it. I think really what it hinges on is how Love plays because
Yeah.
he has proven that he could be good, but in the Saints game, he missed Musgrave on two deep passes
Oh, yeah.
and he was wide open.
Mhm.
And so it really depends if Love can show us some love.
Mhm.
But I just trust Jared Goff in situations that I shouldn't trust him in, I guess, because he's just good.
Boy,
He's just good.
we're gonna have to figure that out for prime predictions tomorrow, man, because this is now where we're getting into the real good stuff of week 4. Like week 3, we bounced back in big superior fashion. And again, I think these bets are gonna be tasty. And by the way, this is the weekend where we've got an international game. And
Oh yeah,
yep, Atlanta and Jacksonville. And again,
6:30 a.m.
yep. And here's the thing, London loves the Jags. So I'm
They
like,
do.
yeah, that's why I'm like, I love this. But again, I think my best take, Bijan Robinson feasts this week. Because
Just goes
just
crazy.
goes off. Desmond Ritter, he's just gonna look at Desmond Ritter and go, look, just give me the football. And I mean, because why wouldn't you if you're playing in London? Again,
Yeah.
London loves the Jags that much that they've even contemplated about moving them there, but it wouldn't work. The time zones would be out of
Yeah.
control. But still, I think it's a hell of an experience, fun game. I think honestly, it's hard to say, but I do think the Jags at the very least would get 4, but I'm keeping an eye on Bijan Robinson in this game. I think he's really going to
Yeah.
end up feasting it this week.
It really depends if Desmond Ritter can get the ball out to his wide receivers. I can see a case that the Falcons beat the Jags, but this just seems like a bounce back week for the Jaguars. Of course, they just lost to the Texans, so who knows? That is such a wild card game right there.
Oh, 100%. Now, there are 2 0-3 games real quick before we wrap this up. Now, there are 2 of them. Minnesota and Carolina. In this game, do we really trust Kirk Cousins, at least up in this? I mean, again, I didn't think he looked bad but I just felt like the defense let him down miserably. And I do think that Minnesota does have that offense where they could play up in Carolina. And again, this is also the time where Thielen is inviting his former franchise into his territory in Carolina. So might be interesting to watch that game from there.
Yeah, I just can't see the Vikings losing this game, even though it's an away game. I just think there's 0-3. This is just a game that they can't lose.
Oh,
Their season was ended yesterday because like getting to the playoffs is just way harder when you're 0-3. But if they go 0-4, like things probably head coach wise or like organization wise has to change because they have players on that team. And if you can't beat the Panthers, like, all right, it's time to do something.
Oh yeah, 100%. And then the other one, this is a tale, but this is a tale between two sorry franchises right now that just got annihilated. Who's really going to have? I honestly think this could be the opposite of annihilation. This could be just a slow scoring game because of just how bad they
just like 15-13 at the end of the game, just something nasty.
I'm almost thinking 6-9.
Oh no. I mean, I could see it, man. Both of these teams are they're just not good.
It's either Denver's pissed or Chicago's pissed. Which poison are you really taking at this point? Because that's just I don't know.
So it's at Chicago?
It is at Chicago, yeah.
I don't know. I think that the Broncos are going to be favored in this game.
They're favored by 3.
Yeah, they're favored by 3. I think that they are, and I think if I'm a betting man, I'm going with the Broncos. I trust Russ more than I trust Fields. And I don't know. That's an ugly game. It's bad.
And another side note, because looking at this week, this is division rival week. Now, of course, one of them is obviously one game's international. The Thursday night game, that's going to be great. I think the TV ratings will be really, really good, but I think that might prove if Jordan Love can really play in his own division, that's going to be a hell of a headline. I'm going to be honest. I'm going to go the other side with that Philadelphia point line because it's -8. I think the Commanders might give them fits. But think about it. They got embarrassed last week against Buffalo. They're not going to have that kind of performance again. And here's the funny thing. Washington's 2-1. Don't write off Sam Howell in a couple spots. That's where I'm like, okay, if Philadelphia's offense is not the same, that's going to be interesting. But then I got Tampa, New Orleans, 2-1. I got obviously, I've got Miami and Buffalo, which that is going to be
going to be a great game. I can't wait for that game.
Great, and then you got Baltimore and Cleveland in Cleveland.
It's going to be a great game as well. That's going to be a super low scoring game.
Yep, and then I've got the Raiders and the Chargers, and it's in LA and SoFi. Honest to God, if they cough that game up, we're both going to just lose our stuff. And then you've got Arizona, San Francisco, which that kind of seems a little of a snooze. And then the Monday night game, the Seahawks and Giants in New York. Now, that might be a little bit interesting. But then you got that week 5 and that next Thursday night, Bears Commanders. That's going to be – so it's actually walking into a pretty damn good week 4, week 5. So this is going to be really interesting to see in Prime Predictions this week.
Yeah, this is going to be a fun week to try to predict. There's actually another game I don't think that you mentioned was Bengals-Titans. I think that game is going to be super interesting because the Titans defense is actually pretty good.
Now, I think the Bengals, because here's the question. Do you still keep going with Joe Burrow with that aggravated calf, or do you turn around safe? Because remember, anybody that's watched that Titan defense, they'll sock you in the mouth. And they're in.
Oh yeah,
they are in Nashville. So that's not. If I'm Zach Taylor,
I'm taking him out of that game.
I wouldn't even bother risking that. I would take him out of the game. Just take the L. And again, you could rebound from this, but I'd rather Joe Burrow be healthy than him getting hurt, especially against a tough, well-played defensive team in Mike Vrabel's Titans. That's going to
Absolutely.
be, yeah, I would not risk that.
Yeah,
But,
not at all.
yeah, it's going to be a good week, but I'm excited for it, come tomorrow. Our picks are going to be really, really fun to see. But again, there's going to be a lot of, iffies, but it's actually primed to pretty good. I think this is
Yeah.
primed to pretty good with these division rivals. But all right, that's going to do it for Taylor and I here on the Snake Sports Talk Show. And like we've said before here on the show, like, follow, subscribe, hit the bell button for all latest notifications to keep you updated on future and past shows. Taylor and I always have good stuff cooking. I think next week, we're going to have some interviews up in line, especially for Tuesday. And I think we got a really good guest that may come on. Great reporter. She's also been in the Chargers training camp, so we might actually get a chance to kind of get her thoughts on what she's seen. But all of that will be coming up next week, at least tomorrow. Tasty prime prediction picks. Both Taylor and I, in Taylor's inaugural season, he's in the winning column, blowing me away with it. But hey, we're both winning our picks. I'm again, that morning I went 8-2, man. That's why I'm like, I'm gonna probably end up putting in a pretty good Tasty, either a 5 or a 10 teamer in that bet line this weekend. I think it's going to be, I think that's going to be well worth it. Five of those will be the odds, and then the 5 will be the spreads. I think that's kind of fair enough.
Sounds good to me.
Because there's too many good games that I can't really predict all the points. But prime predictions tomorrow. Don't want to end up missing that here on the Snake Sports Talk Show with Taylor and I. Will see you guys tomorrow night.
See ya.